Alright. Welcome to the Wet, Wild, and Warpy channel for today's interview with Curt Phillips, who crushed it at the Maryland Open. He destroyed everyone. Just everyone. Curt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us how long you've been playing, what armies you play. If you're on a team, throw a shout out. Let us know what's going on.
So, I live in the Outer Banks, North Carolina. I was from Maryland, and that's where I started playing 40K when I was a kid. Played Black Templars, I think, was like my first army in third edition. Um, but then I didn't really play, hardcore or anything. I was a kid at the time. And then stopped playing for a while, got back into it briefly. I think it was around like 2012 or something when that Dark Angels and versus Chaos starter box was out. Might have been like sixth edition or something. Played briefly then, but still not real serious. And then um, moved down to the Outer Banks from Baltimore, 2017 or 2018. I don't know, it was the beginning of 8th edition, but when I moved down here, I didn't know anybody. So I was looking for things to do. Randomly went on Games Workshop's website for the first time in like 5 years and started looking at some things. Found a shop nearby, and not a Games Workshop, but just a comic store, game store. And funny enough, when I went in there, ended up meeting some of my best friends now, who are playing 40K and kind of got me back into it. And since living down here, 40K has just been kind of a big part of my life as I, was making new friends and kind of figuring out, life in a different state. And then one thing led to another, and started playing more and more and getting competitive. I've always played Eldar. That was another army that I had back when I was a kid. I had a small craft world army, and just got back in the craft worlds in 8th edition, and then I picked up some Drukhari and Harlequins, and I've basically just been playing all three since for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
Um,
I
whether
found that
it's all Eldari or just one of them.
I found any Eldari chapter is just a gateway drug to other Eldari chapters, right? You start running some Drukhari, and then you're like, well, the Drukhari's not as hot as maybe they were a little bit ago, so I'm gonna go pick up some craft worlds, and then some craft worlds aren't doing as well as maybe they used to because of something. You're like, well, Harlequins are looking pretty right now.
Yeah, it's
Um,
definitely a benefit of playing Aldari because more than likely at least one of the three will be doing well at the time. I don't think there's been a time since the beginning of eighth where at least one of the three hasn't been pretty strong.
yeah,
At one time basically all of them are strong, at least to a certain degree.
right. And that's actually one of the things I that I play Eldari as well. And that's one of the things I love about him is that I can just go, well, I really love Drukhari, but nearing the end of 8th and early ninth, back before they got this brand new codex, it was like, well, I like the Drukhari, but running solo is Drukhari is just really hard in the competitive scene right now. I'm gonna go pick up some Harlequins and kind of piece together a combo list that I'm happy
That was
with.
when the one game that you and I played against, that one game that you and I played, I think that was that phase for you where you started reaching into Harlequins a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure that you shellacked me in that game. So
I had
uh,
been playing, Craft Worlds and Harlequins for a long time at that point. I played more Craft World and Harlequins than I do Drukhari, so
right.
I think it was just more used to what I was
Yeah.
playing with than you were.
Yeah. And Drukhari has been my bread and butter for a long time, but um, so without spending too long in the reminiscent of hanging out phase, let's crack down into this list that you built because I've heard that you've been getting a lot of questions about it. You did something a little out of the ordinary. And let's get down to what that is and what made it work and why it worked and all that jazz. So, let's see, you started with just a patrol here. It looks like a Blackheart patrol.
Yep.
um, with Drazar as your HQ. So no Archon.
Yep.
Any reason you leaned away from the Archon there?
Just with this list, it didn't really provide much of a benefit. I think the only reasons I would take them is if you're taking a real space raid, or if you want the Trueborn, which are really good,
Yeah.
or if you want the Court of the Archon. And I wasn't doing any of those things, so I'm not really sure he gave me anything that I needed.
Yeah. I know right now I'm running one, but only that fight last ability and the Jin Blade, kind of that comboing together, is a nice like backline
Oh yeah,
clear for me. Which is how I use it. I go, hey, if you come into what is deemed Archon's area, he's gonna go try to scare you away.
oh
Um,
yeah. That fight last ability is strong, and it's not like the Incubi where you got to win a roll off or anything. It's just you're fighting last,
yep.
so it's definitely strong.
So then that comes down to a unit of Cabalite Warriors with a blaster. I gotta ask you, is the blaster guy just a holdover, or
I had some points. Figure one blaster. If you get it's black heart, so I can get a reroll to hit in there and randomly pop off a few wounds.
yep.
In my next list, I might end up taking that out, and I was thinking about putting some whips on the Akathis for the racks.
The
Just something
electrocorrosive
like
ones?
that. Yeah, yeah, where you can
Yeah.
get 6 attacks.
Yeah.
That
I,
way, when they get into trouble, I at least got
yeah.
something to hit back with.
No, so I like the electrocorrosive whips and the venom blade actually. I like the venom blade as well, just the wounding on twos. It's not,
Yeah,
but you just throwing wounds, right? I mean that's what racks are good at. When it comes to those later turns, is you're just throwing wounds at your opponent. Like deal
yeah,
with
I just
this.
like the 6 attacks from the whip because it's if you're if you're out of your boat and you got a little 5-man squad holding an objective somewhere, you can shoot at somebody else, and then people are surprised when your racks have 12, 18 attacks. If
Yep.
you got 5 and the one guy has a whip, it's
Yep.
18 attacks. So
And
it's
and
pretty strong.
the move to -1 AP on their weapons was, I think it was a really big upgrade for the racks.
Yeah, I
Uh,
almost forgot they had it. I think I played a couple games without it.
yeah, no. So the rack blades have that -1, and it's -1 is just so much bigger than -0. Like you don't think -1's gonna do, but ugh, difference
hmm
between a 3 and a 4 is big.
Or a 2 and a 3.
Yeah. Um, so then we come down to some incubi, and I've been seeing incubi in every Dark Eldar list, just period. I've yet to see a Dark Eldar list without incubi. You want to tell me why?
They're just extremely cost effective, and they're especially with the advance and charge. I think that really helps kind of get them over to the top. With a 7-inch move, you can advance and charge. They kill what they hit oftentimes if you're going at the right targets.
Right.
They wreck Space Marines, which are such a huge part of the meta. Um, and like I said, they're just cost effective. Oftentimes they will die. I mean, it's a toughness 3, 1 wound model.
Yeah.
They're gonna die. But
Yep.
when you're jumping out of boats and advancing and hitting something, or if something gets into your lines and that's your counterpunch, they very cost effective.
Yep.
They do their job very well.
Yeah. I've found that my incubi generally, not always, but generally, get one, right? So when once they hit something, whatever they hit, that's gone. But then they're generally left. They're in the wind at that point.
Yeah, the incubi never survived from me.
No. Um. So I see you running a unit of 9 here. Is that so you can fit better in a boat, or
Um, that's
just how the points
because
fell?
slightly, but also um, I needed. I went back and forth a few times, but I really wanted one unit, one like real banger unit that would. I felt like a lot of times with just the MSU when you're getting a bunch of smaller units, I just I have this problem with charging too many units at one time and getting interrupted.
Yep.
And for bigger units of like Death Guard or just some Space Marine Terminators with Storm Shield, especially Dark Angels. You know, having a one unit of 9 to really go in there to drop the hammer
Yeah.
was kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. And I guess it paid off.
Yeah, that one unit of 9 did work. I think it killed 4 or 5 um, Dark Angel Terminators, the Deathwing or whatever they are.
Was that in a single
Um,
swing?
yeah, so um, that's it's but those Terminators are so tough. I mean, it was like
Yeah.
maybe 8 or 9 of them when they hit, so they still couldn't kill him, but it hurt.
Yeah. Well, sometimes if you can cripple the squad, it's enough, right?
Hmm.
If as long as it's not that threat of 9 walking around the table anymore, and now it's the threat of 2 walking around the table, that's much more manageable.
Hmm. And for
Maybe.
the Death Guard, even though they have the -1 damage, so that really sucks for the Incubi with their
Yep.
2 damage weapons. Still, if you have that many attacks with 9 Incubi, um, you're still likely to knock a few guys down.
Right. Um, so then another unit of 5, and I'm assuming they're essentially doing the same job, just um, not as well, essentially.
Yeah, they'll typically go after smaller units, things that I know 5 Incubi can clean up.
Right.
The 9 man's typically the ones that I'm asking a lot of. The 5 mans are the ones that I try to have clean up the 5 man intercessor or something,
Right.
Something smaller that they can clean up.
Clear an objective out, clear out this, clear out that, just kind of
Right.
pick up something that needs picked up, essentially. Not necessarily hard to pick up, but it needs to go away.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
so, and then you got, at least in this patrol, you have 4 transports. No Grizzly trophies?
Yeah. There's no really reason behind it. I guess it's just how the points fell.
Right.
Uh, I've played with Grizzly trophies more often than I haven't. Um, and they definitely are good. I like Grizzly trophies. But I'm not really sure why I just went without them this time, just the way the points fell. I was thinking about, in the next list, I'll probably take that blaster off the one boy and get a couple Grizzly trophies in there.
I'll have you know that the one blaster guy has made quite a difference in some of my games, though.
Right.
You rolled back when everybody got to Overwatch. You rolled that 6 for that blaster on Overwatch, and you're like, I've done it.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, with that Blackheart reroll, you're
Mhm.
most likely going to hit with that one blaster,
Yeah.
and then you're winning most things on a 3. And if I don't wound and it's on like a tank that doesn't have an invuln or something, I'll probably spend a command point. That way I just get that going through
Yep.
and do d6 damage to something. So it's, it can help.
Yeah. Well, it adds up too, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, sir.
so, do 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 do. What do we got here? We got our next patrol detachment. Looks like Custom Coven Dark Techno detachment, which is very popular right now. Um, and I believe this is the detachment that surprised some people. Um, some of the units in this detachment, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It was funny though because when I saw, I think it was Goonhammer's article, and they covered a couple tournaments, and I went to this one in Australia, and like 3 of the 4 top lists were Drukhari, and 2, maybe even all 3, had a bunch of Talos and Kronos, and I was like, what? I thought I was kind of original in that one, but then I see apparently Australia's already doing it.
well, it's no fair because they're a day ahead, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I actually don't
Yep.
know if they're a day ahead. I don't know anything about time zones.
Yeah, they are. So you could say they're cheating.
Yeah, they're cheating. Eh,
Yep.
that's for you guys, Australia. Take that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh huh. All right. So you got the homunculus with Master Genesis, and Master Genesis, that's the auto 3. heal,
Yep.
I believe.
Auto 3 heal. Yeah, because you get to heal D3 on a Coven monster within 3 inches, I believe it is, and just had the ability to auto heal 3. I knew the Kronos were going to be a big part of the list, and if I can heal 3 every time,
Yep.
it's better than potentially rolling a 1 multiple turns in a row.
Which, let's be honest, that's always what happens. That's
Yeah.
that's you can expect that.
Let's get those D3 dice out of here. I hate D3. Awful.
So then we have the Helm of Spite, right? So
Crucial.
it came in big for you?
Oh yeah, dude. I probably caused perils from my opponent at least 5 or 6 times throughout the 5 game tournament, man. Like nonstop. Anytime I saw a power go off that went off on like a 5, 6, 7, I'd be like, all right, here we go, and perils.
Yep. Did you get many? Did you kill any that way?
Uh,
Through perils?
Actually, no. I'm
Because
thinking I may have, but I don't think so.
when you explode through perils, you get an extra explosion, right? That affects
Yeah,
everything.
and that's why I was thinking I don't think I did because I don't remember that happening.
Right.
I definitely think I got a couple dudes like down to 1 though, you
Right.
know.
And like we said earlier, every wound counts, right? Every wound counts,
Mhm.
especially at those top tables, which unfortunately, I didn't have the pleasure of being up there with you this round, this time.
Yeah.
Um, so moving on, we're going down to 1, 2, 3 units of racks, one being a 10-man.
Yep. I think I was just trying to keep a patrol
Okay.
and stay. So I needed 3 or less infantry, and a unit of 10 racks gets me the extra liquefier, and it's also good to sit on an objective or something. 10 racks with a 5 up, feel no pain, and sometimes a 5 up invuln is fairly tough to move. I mean, it's not
Right.
really difficult if the opponent has the right kind of attacks or firepower, but a 10 man rack unit is substantial.
Especially if they dedicate to it. Um,
Yep.
uh, so were you running a master homunculus or was it just a regular homunculus?
Nope. Regular.
So that's why is that why you have no units of what the hemotypes or whatever they're called?
Right. Yeah, I didn't have any master anything or any of the favored retinue units. Didn't spend the points on any of it.
Um, so I'm assuming you got your points out of these racks generally, because
Yeah.
generally dark techno racks you get your points out of.
Yeah, it's kind of silly. It's pretty auto include.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see if what happens to Dark Technomancers in general,
Yeah.
and if it gets nerfed at all, and then what people are going to do with Coven units after that.
Yeah. No,
But
I'm
as Dark
very
Technomancers, auto take.
yeah I'm very interested to see what happens with covens if dark techno goes away as a competitive leader, so to say.
Mm.
Because I don't know as though I'm super happy with the rest of the covens at the moment. Um, but we'll find out.
I like the Dark Creed. Yeah, I was playing around with a leadership uh, list
Yep.
that brought all 3 elf factions, and Dark Creed would play a big role in that. But the -1 damage one could be good,
Yep.
but it'd only be good on the bigger units, and I'm not sure that they're very good without Dark Technomancers for offensive output.
And then I think that Prophets of Flesh could be ran well for a rack heavy list. Specifically
Yeah,
a lower toughness covens list, right? Because Talos and Kronos don't really benefit all that much from that
basically at
Prophets of
all,
Flesh. Yeah.
especially if you're standing next to a homunculus.
Yeah.
Literally, you don't benefit from it.
Um, unless I guess there's a +1 to wound out there or something, right?
Right.
Which, let's be honest, there's tons of +1s to wound out there. Um,
Hmm.
and here we come to the surprise that really got a lot of interest, especially from me. because we were talking about this list beforehand, and I was like, man, I just don't know. I just
hmm
um,
That was the reaction I got from just about everybody I talked to
yeah,
about it because I'm the type that likes to talk a lot about list ideas. It's basically how I spend my days is on Battlescribe or the Warhammer app, just building lists basically all day, every day. And Chronos was something that caught my eye when looking through the codex. And man, a lot of people were just like yeah, they seem good, but not a lot of people were fully on board.
So I think in my head what Kronos were doing is they were still a support model, right? And
Mm,
when I looked at their data sheet, I didn't go, wow, look at the damage this guy deals. And I
right.
didn't go, wow, look at how survivable this guy is. And I didn't go,
hmm
wow, this is really impressing me. I like its points, but
It's all those things you mentioned, man.
right,
They they were really the anchor of the entire list. They were the centerpiece, the six Chronos running up the middle of the board and just saying, come on, come closer. And they did that job tremendously well the entire tournament.
so did you play these Chronos pretty straight up, moving right away, or did you hold them back? What was the kind of strategy that you were employing with these Chronos?
Um, I was typically trying to keep them center in deployment and behind. We often, I think, every game we had like one big. Well, there's ruins everywhere. What,
Yeah,
8 ruins on the table? But typically we would get at least one big ruin that we could deploy behind.
right.
That was kind of central. So I was keeping them pretty central, keeping them behind obscuring terrain, and then basically they got Fly just jumping out over it and just kind of trying to take the center of the board. Now that worked well in my matchups, but I did avoid AdMech and exploding las cannons. I wouldn't do that. You know
Right.
what I mean? Some
Yeah,
lists you're not gonna want to do that.
right. Because you got to be a little more careful. Because they're still sitting on that 6-up invulnerable save. I mean, they have a 3-up armor save, I believe. But it's still just that 6-up. Um, outside of the 3-up, but at least they're still benefiting from the 5-up. Um, how many came back? How many of these guys throughout the course of the games came back onto the
You
table
know,
after being destroyed?
uh, three, I believe. Uh, Never twice in a game,
Okay.
um, but three in three different games, I believe. One came back, which um, sucks for an opponent to see.
Yeah, yeah. When especially when something this durable comes back, you're like, man, I just put a whole bunch of work into
Especially
removing
when
that
it's
thing.
like round three or turn three or four, when a lot of the army's depleted, and it's like, oh well, now I'm bringing back Kronos, and man, they're really tough, and I spammed that one command point stratagem to treat them as if they're in battle round 5 for power from pain.
Yep.
So typically I would do that right away. I think in a couple games I actually just jumped one Nth Chronos out, blasted something, spent the command point on them, and then the next turn jumped the other one out and did the same for them. That to try to, especially against some lists that were a little more shooty, I tried to
Right.
protect them until they got that 5-up in one.
Right. It's funny because so when I read that stratagem initially, I was like, oh, that's great for everything around the Chronoses, right? For some reason, I never like my brain never went use it on the Chronos, dummy, right?
hmm
It was always like, well, if I can get my Incubi near the Chronos and kill something,
Right.
that'd be amazing. Or if I can get my liquefier racks outside of their transport near the Chronos and kill something, that'd be fantastic. Um, but yeah, it had never occurred to me that a unit of 3 Chronos with that 5-up, 5-up, 3 DT flamers is gonna just
Yeah, I mean, when you have 3d6, the full unit has 3d6 auto hitting strength 5, AP2, 2 damage, guns, and for every 6 to wound, it's 3 flat damage. People don't really realize that, and they're like, oh shit, so it's 2 damage and it jumps up to 3 on 6 to wound, and you're rolling so many dice.
Yeah.
You get sixes quite often. And then even the other non auto hitting guns still strength 5, AP2, 2 damage.
Yeah.
Also sixes go 3 wounds, and some people were concerned about them taking a lot of mortals. Um, it's only one per gun. So even if you have 3 shots on a gun and you roll 3 ones, it's still only 1d3 mortals. So I'd say on average, if I'm shooting with a whole unit, like all 3 of those guns, I was probably taking like somewhere between 3 and 5 mortals seem to be the most common, and then I'm just shrugging a couple, 2 or 3 of them from the 5
Right.
up, feel no pain. So ended up being like a couple mortals a turn. It wasn't a big deal at all for
So
the damage they're putting out.
did that kind of force you to shoot each Chrono separately, or were you still shooting them as a blob?
As a blob, I
Okay.
mean, I just have to, like, if you see me rolling the dice on the stream, you'll see, like, I'll have, like, 5 hits, 3 hits, 2 hits, and I'll just roll them basically at the same time, but, like, one after the other, just to see if I'm getting double ones for a single gun, I'm
Right.
not combining them. So, but I mean, other than sometimes I'd split fire because that one is 18 inches. So there are a
Yeah.
couple times where I put the 12-inch auto hitting into something a little bit closer and then fling the other ones a little further downfield.
Right. Especially when you're shooting into something that's a little more uh, killable, right?
Hmm.
You don't want to put two 2d6 per Chronos, 2 damage shots into something that's probably going to be wasted after 2d6. So
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I had, other small arms fire and, you know, a lot of other units that could clean up smaller units. So I tried not to waste too much of the Technomancer shots into.
so
Um,
what was your expectation coming into this tournament, record wise?
I was aiming for 4-1. That's typically my goal is 4-1. If I say I want to go 5-0, it's probably not likely. um, uh, I'm normally I'd say my most common record is 3-2, but I aim for 4-1. If I have a losing record, I'm not happy. But 3-2 is the usual, and 4-1 is what I aim for, and that's kind of what I was feeling with this list. I hadn't played with this list at all. This was
Yep.
like game one was the first time I played with the 6 Chronos and 20 Hellions.
That's we haven't even gotten to the Hellions yet.
Oh yeah,
Why don't we head there now? Why
yeah.
don't have we talked about the Chronos enough, or do they deserve more time?
Um, I can just give a little overview. They're tough as hell. It takes a lot of firepower for your opponent to kill them, especially if they're not like AdMech or something. I mean, even if they are AdMech, but if they got a 3 up, 5 up, 5 up, 7 wounds, toughness 7 next to the homunculus, which was a big deal to having
Yeah.
toughness 7, and healing every time they kill something in combat, which is not terrible in combat because that 6s to wound also makes them 2 damage AP2. So it seems like 4 attacks apiece, strength 6, 5, whatever it
Six.
is, AP1, 1 damage. But when you get roll 6 to wound, it becomes AP2, 2 damage. So they can throw down against smaller units. I'm not throwing them the tougher things,
Right.
but they can. Anytime I saw little infantry hanging around anywhere
Mm-hmm.
nearby, I would send the Chronos at them to try to rack up some wounds and heal them or someone around them.
And they get to re-roll ones in the fight phase, right?
Yeah, because of the
The
I had
spirit
a
probe,
yep, I had one in each unit.
which is the right number.
Yep.
Um, so Andrew Simmons is wondering, much like I'm wondering, how many times you used the eviscerating flyby strat. Not once. Not a single time, he says.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I thought about it a few times. It just, I think it's something that I will use more going forward. Um, but it just didn't come up a whole lot. Um, Typically, the Hellions were uh, charging into something deep. I would deep strike one unit in several of my games, if not all of them. I'm not sure. But so they're just coming out deep strike and charging into something, getting that 4-up in Vaughn for 1 command point from the Book of Rust.
Well, and
Um,
there's strife, right? So they also get a +1 to charge if nothing else is engaged
exactly,
with that unit.
exactly. That's why I felt comfortable putting a unit in a deep strike because they get an 8-inch charge, and I could, if they fail that, I'm re-rolling that for
Right.
the command point. So I think they hit every charge. I don't think I failed a charge out of deep strike, so that went well.
Well, an 8 rerollable is much more feasible than a
Yeah,
9 rerollable, right?
slightly above average.
Right.
So typically with 2 dice rolls, you're gonna get it.
Right. It doesn't seem like a big difference between 8 and 9, but that extra 1 of that 9 is it can be the deal breaker more often than not.
Yeah,
Um, so we got ourselves a succubus here, and there's been a lot of talk about succubuses and what's the right way to run the succubus. Um, you got the Dark Lotus talks and precision blows and razor flails. Is this the right way to run a succubus?
I think so. I think it's the best one. Not wasn't a huge fan of the ridiculous 46 attacks or whatever it was from the broken one.
Yep.
I'm glad that the Maryland Open made that decision for me because I didn't want to bring her. But it's like if you don't get rid of it, then it's like you kind of have to. Like
Right.
if you're gonna allow this thing, and if I'm trying to do as well as I can, why wouldn't I bring it?
Right.
So I'm glad they shut that down.
Yeah.
And the with this build, the one that I took, still allows a ton of attacks, but it allows those mortal wounds, those sweet, sweet mortal wounds that the Drukhari don't have a ton of unless you're like spamming Phantasm grenade launchers, which I don't have any. Um,
Right.
so against a lot of tougher units, going back to the Terminators and the Death Guard and all that
Yep.
stuff, you know, you're getting 14 attacks. If you want to spend the command points to up the drugs for more attacks, you can get 16, I believe. But 14 attacks, hitting on twos, and any of those sixes, if you roll any sixes to hit, it just goes through. You don't have to roll a wound, and whatever the damage of the weapon is, you do that many mortal wounds. So with this build, every roll of a 6 to hit, I'm getting 2 mortal wounds. So uh, if you spike with that, like if you roll 14 dice and roll 5 or 6 sixes to hit, that's 10 or 12 mortal wounds just
You
like
just
that
slaughtered
off the
something,
bat.
is what
Yeah,
happened. It's
yeah.
whatever you were
If you want
attacking
to,
is
if you want
fine.
a character dead, throw this chick at her.
Yep. No, so right now I know that I'm running the Tritech Whip in combination with Competitive Edge, right? So essentially it's twos to hit, twos to wound, and then we try it all over again for every one you save. Um,
If I ran a second succubus, that would be the move.
yeah. And I thoroughly, was just a monster in my games. So I think there's a lot of right ways to run a succubus. Um, there has to be a couple wrong ones. I'm not sure I've seen it yet, but there has to be, right?
Even the thing is, even the worst ones, I was looking at it, even the worst ones are pretty good.
Right.
One of them is like -1 to hit her and -1 to wound her, and
Yeah,
I think that's the worst one.
I really liked that one actually. I was like,
Right.
you know, like if I was building a crusade or something, that would be
Is that like
perfect for
a
that. Like,
that is that a warlord trait or a relic? See, that's just I'm not. I think it's a warlord trait, and it's just -1 to hit her, -1 to wound her, and it's probably the worst warlord
and
trait.
I'm a little surprised you didn't specifically out of all the masters. I think the succubus master is one of the hardest ones to walk away from.
Yeah,
That
that's a potential change for me
yeah.
for sure. That might be coming to a town near you.
Well, I look forward to seeing it in future theaters. Um, so we hit up on the succubus and because you have no master succubus, it means you have no blood brides.
Blood
Um,
brides, I personally think, are the biggest waste of points out of all of the upgraded units,
really,
in my opinion. Yep.
um, because I think it's a
You
different
can get plus
upgrade
you can get +1 to hit on, which is
with
pretty easily
drugs.
if you want it. And uh, AP3. Um, you get an AP1, you get an
Right.
AP2 on
On
sixes to
sixes.
wound. You can also spend. You have a stratagem to give you extra AP for the witches. I don't see why the upgrade is worth it.
You might be selling me right now.
Yeah,
That might be happening. You might be selling me on removing the
you can
blood
get
ride.
AP3 witches without running blood brides.
um, and those are just standard loadout. I'm assuming that's just for the patrol.
Yep, I've uh, went from 5 witches with nothing to 2 units of 20 witches. I was
Yep.
back and forth. I like witches a lot, but just in this list, I went a different direction.
Well, I think witches fill a really important role, and that is quantity. Drukhari doesn't have a lot of ways to get good quantity, right? And
Hmm.
witches really fill that role well.
Yeah, I really like 10 uh, units of 10 are good, uh, but I also really like 20. I like deep striking with an 8-inch charge, and
Yeah.
if you don't make that 8-inch charge, just like I was talking about the Hellions, you re-roll that, and if you get 20 witches into a few things, and you have 2 shard nets, so you're getting a +2 to your roll off for things falling back. If you deep strike and are able to tag like several things in a gun line or something,
Yep.
man, the game's over. Like
Yeah.
if they can't get away from 20 witches and they don't have the ability to hit you in combat to get you off of their stuff,
Yep.
uh,
Especially with that
there
four
it
up
is.
in combat.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so and then you threw in 2 units of Hellions, 10 each. How'd they perform for you? And where did they really come in big?
They were like incredibly important. I think I've said the Chronos were probably the MVP. The Hellions were the runner-up MVP. Um, they were my It's a unit that I would deep strike a unit of oftentimes, but even just the one that I started on the board, I would typically try to keep it out of range of enemy fire, and I actually played them pretty conservatively. I
Okay.
wanted to save them until they hit.
Right.
I didn't want them to die before they did anything, so I would sometimes Hellions wouldn't even hit anything until turn 3, but when they do, they kill things. They they have a bunch of shots too. So I mean, the 110-man unit's putting out 20 shots, so that can do some damage. I would typically do that on just your little, 5-man
Mm.
garbage troop unit somewhere and try to knock something out. But uh, just having that many attacks, and I went with the random drugs to give
Yeah.
them 2 drugs. I think that's the best route for Hellions because basically anything that you roll really helps them.
Right.
I mean,
There.
if you roll strength and attacks, you got a freaking hammer.
Yeah.
If you
There.
have extra strength and extra attacks on Hellions.
There's not a lot of bad choices. One of the things I love about the changes in the Drukhari Codex is there's almost no bad drugs. Almost no bad drugs.
Yeah,
And
there's some units that don't really need certain things,
right.
but
But
yeah,
even the +1 ballistic skill drug has a place. Like
oh yeah.
if
My
you
one buddy loves his 12 Reavers with the 4 heat lances.
yeah,
You're hitting on twos. Typically you're gonna have 4 heat lances hitting.
yeah, and heat lances wound generally
Hmm.
with that strength 8. So
But even
there's
with just the 20 shots from the 10 Hellions, like if they roll that, I'm not really thrilled.
right,
But still, 20 poison shots hitting on twos, it's gonna be a lot of hits. And,
yeah,
you know.
and it adds up. Everything adds up.
Hmm.
So
But I would spend that as soon as they kill something, I'm spending that 1 command point to give them a 4 up in one. I'd often try to tie up a bunch of things, but man, Hellions they hit hard with their flat 2 damage. You can
yep.
AP2, you can get to AP2 or even AP3. Um, they re-rolling wounds, that strat, money with the Hellions, man.
Did
Like,
you did you use
ugh,
the Cult of Strife move through the walls uh, strat at all?
they're infantry.
Okay, right, they
So
are infantry. I was
so
thinking,
I
I
was
was solely
also
thinking because of the fly keyword.
You just brought up another point though in my thought. They're infantry, so they
Right.
fly, but they can move through walls and they can do uh, secondaries like banners and stuff.
Yeah,
Um, so
hit
they
it
were doing
fast.
that a lot. If they were, if I was, like I said, kind of playing them conservative until I knew they could hit something,
Hmm.
I would oftentimes have them plant a banner somewhere or do a scrambler somewhere
Well,
or something like that.
and because of how fast they are, a lot of times they have the speed to get from cover to cover without exposing themselves, right?
Super
Because
fast.
yeah, super fast.
14-inch move base. If I rolled the movement, uh, they're even faster. They got the advance and charge. In my last game against Black Templars, actually, uh, rolled up the board. So I didn't even have advance and charge yet. This is round one, but I put him on the line in a ruin because it was Dawn of War.
Yep.
He had some Space Marines in a corner ruin or something, and just moved up 14. Had an 8-inch charge. Bam, hit turn one. So I think that was the only game that I like put him on the line
Yep.
and went forward, and they connected and they did work. And spend that one command point as soon as they kill something for that 4-up inbound.
Yep.
Um, lightning fast reflexes is only 1 CP now, so they were the recipient of that multiple times. Um, and then it's like you know, they whittled down that one unit you had on the board, and then bam, here comes another 10
Yep.
ready to play.
Um, so that's your list, and we've kind of covered how the list operated as we went through each thing. Um, are there any other things about this list, about the games, about uh, uh, how it kind of went down that should be mentioned before anything else before we move on at all?
No, I think we pretty much got it all. It's mostly just the Chronos were the centerpiece unit trying to hold the middle of the board. The Hellions were the finesse unit, really moving around. Then you had the boats. The Incubi were kind of the counterpunch melee unit. The Dark Necromancers in the boats, flying up and putting the liquefiers into things. I really think it was a well-rounded list. It had a little bit of everything and covered the board very well. Everything had its purpose, so I really liked it.
So what I haven't asked you what secondaries did you take generally?
Heard the Prey. I don't think there was a game I didn't take Heard the Prey. Maybe I played against Tyranids one game. I may not have taken it there, but I may have. I'm not sure. But Heard the Prey was almost auto take. And then it was between uh, scramblers or banners. Typically, it was a choice between the two. Then um, oftentimes to kill one based on what the opponent had. But Herd the Prey is so damn good.
It is.
It's amazing.
And I really like it even if my opponent takes engage on all fronts. Because you're just
Double up
giving
on them points.
yeah, you're just giving me things to hit at that point, right?
It's like,
Like
oh, you think you're gonna survive with that one unit over here in this corner as fast as I am, as hard as I hit? Nah,
no,
like I
it's
love it when people take
yeah,
engage against me.
it's too important for me to kill that thing. Like
Right.
I can't let it stay.
Yeah, if I kill that one unit, I'm gonna get 2 points plus a potential taking one or even
Right,
three away from or I guess one or I guess just one away from the
right.
opponent if it's just one quarter.
Well,
But
they gotta
yeah,
send. Plus, it means they gotta send you something new, right? It means they have to keep sending you something new, and
and Drukhari are better at trading than
yeah,
any other army right now.
right now, that
Yep.
AdMech Codex is coming soon, so we'll find out what happens with that.
I'm glad it's coming because I am tired of the old one. So we'll see how the new one does.
Yeah, when they said when they posted they were coming out with that, I was like, I really want AdMech to stay good, but I really hope it's a different good because I don't know how much more exploding sixes I can take.
It's
Um,
like can't tell you how many times someone's like, "All right, we got 4 las cannons shooting here. All right, that's 16 hits, and what just happens?" Like, what?
um,
Hitting on twos, re-rolling everything. Oh, you just missed that one. Okay, well now I hit and it's now 3 hits. It's like what?
well, I know that you have some games that you're looking forward to getting in today. Um, are there any shout outs you want to do? Anybody you wanna make sure that people know about?
Coast to Wargaming. The boys down here in uh, Eastern Virginia, the coastal Virginia area, as well as coastal North Carolina, where I am in the Outer Banks. Coastal Wargaming is a great group. We're coming up. We're making moves. We're getting some good tournaments in. We're moving up. I think we're currently 11th in ITC, and we're only going to go up from there. I think we're eventually going to start our own YouTube channel or something. We're trying to get something going and get
Right.
some battle reports in and stuff, and then also, um, I know Dan and the guys are getting in. Some tournaments are going to be coming up. We're also collaborating with George over at Battlegrounds in Richmond for a GT in the end of July, I believe. So as well as, like I said, I think we're having gonna have a couple RTTs along with some other tournaments down in the Virginia Beach area within the next several months. So
Well, make
keep
sure to reserve me a
stay
ticket.
tuned.
Make sure to reserve me a ticket at the majors and the GTs because you know I'm coming down because I gotta
Hmm. Defend your belt.
yeah, I gotta go defend that belt. Um,
Right.
no, you got Coastal War Gaming is a great group. Anytime you guys show up, it's a blast. Um, on that note, I'm gonna yell out Wet Wild and Warpy. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and then get notifications and whatnots. Because that's how you guys let us know that we're doing something right. If we're not doing something right, let us know in the comments, uh, because that makes us cry ourselves to sleep at night. Uh,
Yeah.
um, and we look forward to having you on again. I know that we're gonna end up doing a Drukhari Codex review right here on Wet Wild and Warpy with this guy, this this
Look
this
forward to it.
this good looking man right here. Um, and so I look forward to seeing you next.